You're not losing money because the market is unfair. You're losing money because you're walking into something dangerous without a map. Every day you sit down to trade without a clear plan, you are stepping into uncertainty and pretending confidence will protect you. It won't. Confidence without structure is just noise, and noise is expensive. Most traders don't realize this early. You open the charts and you feel ready. You've watched videos, you've seen examples. You think understanding price means you're prepared, but the moment the market starts moving, something inside you takes over. Decisions get rushed, rules get bent, emotions start negotiating. That's when the damage begins. Not because price moved the wrong way, because you had no rules telling you what to do when it did. A trader without a plan is always reacting. You're responding to movement instead of executing decisions that were already made. You let the market pull answers out of you instead of bringing answers with you. And when you do that, you are vulnerable. You convince yourself that experience alone will save you, that after enough screen time, things will click. But experience without structure just trains bad habits faster. You don't evolve, you reinforce mistakes. Every result you've ever had came from behavior, not knowledge, not insight. Behavior, how long you waited, how much you risked, whether you followed rules or feelings, whether you stopped when you were supposed to. Those choices don't happen by accident. They happen because you either planned for them or you didn't. When you don't have a plan, every trade feels important. Every move feels urgent. You start believing you must act or you'll miss something. And that pressure pushes you into trades you never intended to take. You felt it. That moment when price starts moving and your heart speeds up. You weren't planning to enter, but now you're staring at the screen thinking, if I don't take this, I'll regret it. So you click, no preparation, no clear reason, just emotion. And when it works, it reinforces the behavior. You tell yourself, see, I knew it. But when it doesn't, you feel confused, angry, and betrayed. You start searching for answers in the wrong places. The truth is simpler and harder to accept. You didn't fail because the market did something strange. You failed because you had no structure to protect you from yourself. Once you accept that, the conversation changes because now the real enemy shows up. Fear doesn't look dramatic. It looks reasonable. You close trades early because you don't want to lose what you have. You tell yourself you're being careful, but really, you don't trust your own decisions. Greed doesn't shout. It whispers after a win. It tells you to push a little harder, take one more trade, increase size just slightly. And because you don't have a plan saying stop, you listen. Hope keeps you trapped. You stay in bad positions because admitting you're wrong feels heavier than watching the loss grow. You start negotiating with price. You start waiting for relief instead of following rules. And revenge feels powerful. After a loss, you want control back. You don't want discipline. You want the money back. Fast. That urgency turns you reckless. None of this means you're weak. It means you're human. But humans cannot trade without rules. A plan is not about being right. It's about being consistent. A real plan answers questions before emotions ask them. When do you trade? When do you stop? What must be present for you to act? How much are you willing to lose? No debate, no adjustment, no second chances. If you can't answer those on paper clearly, then the market will answer them for you. And it will not be kind. Your plan doesn't need to impress anyone. It needs to protect you. It needs to fit how you actually behave, not who you wish you were. Simple rules, clear limits, written down, why you trade, when you trade, what you wait for, what makes you walk away. When those answers exist, emotions lose power. Not because they disappear, but because they no longer decide. And once decisions stop being emotional, money stops being emotional too. You stop trying to make money fast. You start trying to stay alive. You start respecting capital. You stop treating losses like insults and wins like proof of superiority. You slow down, You protect yourself. And when protection becomes your priority, something unexpected happens. Losses stop destroying you. They become information. You review them calmly. Did you follow the plan? If yes, you move on. If no, you fix behavior. No drama, no self-hate, no spiraling. This is how strength is built. Quietly, repeatedly, without anyone watching. Over time, urgency fades. You don't need to trade every day. You don't need action to feel validated. You show up, you execute, you leave. Progress becomes subtle, almost invisible, but it's real. And one day you notice you're different. You don't panic. You don't chase. You don't argue with the market. You trust your process more than your impulses. That is what a plan gives you. Not riches overnight, not excitement, stability. And stability is what keeps traders alive long enough to grow. Once stability enters your trading, everything around it starts to change. You stop feeling rushed. You stop feeling hunted by the screen. You stop believing that every move is meant for you. And that alone removes a massive amount of pressure most traders don't even realize they're carrying. Without a plan, trading feels like standing in traffic, trying to guess which car will stop for you. With a plan, you're no longer crossing blindly. You know when to move and when to stay still. This is where discipline stops being a word and becomes behavior. Discipline isn't forcing yourself to trade. Discipline is forcing yourself asterisk, asterisk, not asterisk, asterisk, to trade when your rules aren't present. That's the part most people struggle with. Anyone can click when they feel confident. Very few people can sit on their hands when boredom, doubt, or impatience starts poking at them. You've been there. You've waited. Nothing happened. Minutes stretched. Your mind wandered. And suddenly the thought appears, I should be doing something. That thought is dangerous because action feels productive, even when it's not. And in trading, unnecessary action is one of the fastest ways to lose control. A solid plan removes that internal argument. It gives you permission to do nothing. And doing nothing at the right time is one of the most profitable skills you will ever learn. This is where most traders quietly separate from the crowd, not because they know more, but because they wait better. When your plan is clear, you stop staring at the screen all day. You stop searching for confirmation. You stop adjusting your opinion every few minutes. You know what you're waiting for, and until it shows up, the market doesn't exist. That calm is not natural. It's trained, and it only comes from repetition, from following your rules even when nothing exciting is happening, from ending your day flat and being okay with it, from realizing that no trade is always better than a bad one. Once that mindset settles in, protecting capital stops feeling restrictive. It starts feeling responsible. You begin to understand that money is not there to be tested. It's there to be respected. Every time you over risk, every time you ignore limits, you are telling the market you don't value longevity. And the market doesn't forgive that attitude. You decide ahead of time what a loss means. Not emotionally, practically. You know exactly how much damage one bad idea can do, and you make sure it can't hurt you beyond repair. You stop thinking in single trades. You start thinking in sequences, days, weeks, months. This shift is critical because when you think in sequences, individual losses lose their power. They're no longer failures. They're just part of the process, noise inside a larger picture. You don't try to win it all back today. You don't try to prove anything tomorrow. You let consistency do the work. That consistency creates something most traders never experience. Trust in yourself, not confidence from wins, trust from discipline. You know that even on a bad day, you won't self-destruct. Even after a loss, you won't spiral. Even after a win, you won't get reckless. That trust is built through limits, daily limits, weekly limits, emotional limits. You don't trade when you're tired. You don't trade when you're angry. You don't trade when you're chasing. And you don't break these rules once they're written. Because the moment you do, the plan stops protecting you. This is also where losses change their meaning entirely. A loss no longer asks, how do I get this money back? It asks, did I do what I said I would do? If the answer is yes, you close the book and move on. No drama, no shame, no self attack. If the answer is no, you don't get emotional. You get honest. You identify the behavior that caused the damage and you correct it. This is how pain turns into strength. Most people avoid reviewing losses because it hurts their ego. They'd rather blame conditions, timing, or anything outside themselves. But growth requires ownership. You don't grow by avoiding discomfort. You grow by using it. Every loss carries information, not about the market, about you, about your patience, your discipline, your emotional triggers. When you start studying those patterns instead of fighting them, improvement becomes inevitable. Slow, quiet, but real. You begin to notice that the same mistakes don't repeat as often, that certain impulses lose their grip, that you recover faster from setbacks. You're not becoming perfect. You're becoming resilient. And resilience is what keeps you in this game long enough for consistency to compound. This is where the journey stretches out. Weeks pass where nothing special happens. No big wins, no dramatic losses, just execution, just routine, just showing up and doing what you said you would do. This is where most people quit because it feels boring. It feels like stagnation. It feels like nothing is happening, but something is happening. You're building reliability. You're becoming someone who doesn't need excitement to stay disciplined, someone who doesn't need constant validation from the screen, someone who understands that progress is often invisible while it's happening. You protect your energy. You step away when needed. You don't let trading consume your identity. You build a life that supports focus instead of chaos. This balance matters more than people realize. Burned out traders don't fail because they lack skill. They fail because they can't sustain the pressure they put on themselves. A plan protects you from that too. It tells you when to stop. It tells you when enough is enough. It reminds you that tomorrow matters. And over years, not days, this approach changes who you are. You become calm under pressure. You become patient in uncertainty. You become steady when others panic. Not because you're special, but because you built structure and respected it. This is the difference between surviving and perishing. Traders without plans are constantly rebuilding, recovering, starting over, chasing what they lost. Traders with plans are quietly stacking consistency. Small gains, controlled losses, emotional stability. And one day, without realizing when it happened, you look back and see distance between who you were and who you are now. You don't trade for excitement anymore. You trade with intention. You don't feel the need to prove anything. You let results speak quietly over time. That's the trader you become when you stop walking into the market unprepared. That's what a plan builds, not shortcuts, not guarantees. Longevity. Longevity changes the way you see everything. When you've been consistent long enough, you stop measuring yourself by single days. A red day doesn't shake you anymore. A green day doesn't inflate you. You understand that both are temporary and neither defines you. This is where real maturity shows up. Most traders are emotionally tied to their last result. If they won, they feel capable. If they lost, they feel broken. That emotional swing is exhausting and it slowly drains your decision-making ability. A plan cuts that tie. It anchors you to behavior instead of outcome. You stop asking, did I make money today? And start asking, did I execute properly today? That question changes everything. Because when execution becomes the goal, consistency follows. And when consistency follows, results have no choice but to show up over time. You begin to notice something subtle but powerful. Your reactions are slower. You don't rush to fix things. You don't jump to conclusions. You let situations play out without interfering. That patience spills into other parts of your life too. You become less reactive, more thoughtful, more grounded. Trading starts shaping you, not just your account. This is also where the long stretches test you the most. Those periods where the market feels quiet, where opportunities seem rare, where progress feels flat. These stretches are dangerous for impatient traders. They start forcing trades. They start questioning everything. They start abandoning structure because it's not working anymore. But a seasoned trader recognizes these periods for what they are: normal. Not every phase is meant for growth. Some phases are meant for preservation. Your plan keeps you steady during these times. It reminds you that not losing is progress, that staying intact is success. You don't change your rules because of boredom. You don't adjust your risk because of frustration. You trust the process you built when you were calm. That trust is earned, and it's fragile. Break it once, and doubt creeps back in. Break it repeatedly, and you're back to guessing. This is why discipline must be protected as fiercely as capital. You protect your routines, you protect your boundaries, you protect the version of yourself that can execute without hesitation. You don't trade when you're emotionally compromised. You don't trade when life is pulling your focus in 10 directions. You respect the mental clarity this profession demands. Over time, you stop seeing trading as something you do when you feel like it. It becomes something you approach with intention and preparation. You show up ready, or you don't show up at all. That level of self-respect changes outcomes. Losses still happen. They always will. But they don't wound you the way they used to. You don't carry them into the next trade. You don't try to make them mean something about you. They're just part of the terrain. You analyze them, you adjust if needed, and then you move on. This ability to move on is rare. Most people get stuck replaying mistakes, rehearsing pain, reliving frustration. You don't, because your plan already absorbed the impact. It told you what to do before the damage happened. It limited the fallout. It gave you a path forward. And with every cycle of execution, review, and correction, you become more anti-fragile. Stress no longer breaks you. It sharpens you. This is not a dramatic transformation. It's quiet, almost invisible from the outside, but inside, something solid forms. You stop seeking approval from the market. You stop needing constant proof that you're doing okay. You trust your process enough to let it work. That trust frees up mental space. You're no longer obsessed. You're no longer glued to the screen. You don't feel the need to monitor every move. You know when your job is done for the day. This balance preserves energy, and energy is a resource most traders ignore until it's gone. Burnout doesn't announce itself. It creeps in slowly through overtrading, through constant stress, through the inability to step away. A plan protects you from that too. It gives you permission to rest, to disconnect, to live. And ironically, the more you step away, the clearer your thinking becomes when you return. Years pass like this, not in chaos, not in desperation, in steady, intentional repetition. You look back and realize you didn't get here through brilliance. You got here through restraint. You didn't conquer the market. You learned to work within it. You didn't outsmart everyone. You outlasted most. This is the path few choose because it doesn't feed the ego, but it builds something far more valuable than excitement. It builds reliability. And reliability is what allows compounding to do its work quietly, patiently, relentlessly. You become the trader who doesn't need to rush, who doesn't need to prove anything, who doesn't crumble under pressure. You become someone who respects the process enough to let it shape you. And that is how you avoid perishing, not by chasing more, but by becoming steady enough to endure. Endurance is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel exciting while it's being built. Most days it feels ordinary, repetitive, almost forgettable. And that's exactly why most people never develop it. They mistake intensity for progress. They think effort must always feel heavy. They believe growth must always hurt. So when things get quiet, When the routine settles in, when emotions calm down, they assume something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. That quiet is stability taking root. This is the stage where trading stops being about survival and starts becoming about refinement. You're no longer fighting yourself every day. You're no longer trying to fix constant damage. You're simply showing up, executing, and stepping away. You don't need motivation anymore. You rely on commitment. Motivation fades, commitment stays. Commitment is what keeps you following rules on days you don't feel sharp. It's what keeps you from overtrading when you're bored. It's what keeps you from chasing when you're frustrated. You don't ask yourself how you feel before you act. You ask yourself what your plan says, and you follow it, even when emotions disagree. This is where many traders finally understand something they missed in the beginning. Freedom in trading does not come from doing whatever you want. It comes from limiting yourself on purpose. Those limits create clarity. That clarity creates calm, and that calm allows you to make decisions without internal conflict. You stop arguing with yourself. You stop second guessing every choice. You stop carrying trades in your mind long after they're closed, and that mental space is priceless. With it, you see more clearly, you think more rationally, you recover faster, you don't drag yesterday's emotions into today's decisions. This is also where patience deepens. You no longer feel pressured to grow fast. You understand that slow progress, protected properly, always beats fast progress built on instability. You don't rush milestones. You don't force results. You let time work in your favor instead of fighting it. Every month you protect capital is a win. Every week you follow rules is progress. Every day you avoid unnecessary damage is growth. This is how compounding actually happens, not just in numbers, but in character. Your discipline compounds. Your confidence compounds. Your trust in yourself compounds. And over time, you become someone others describe as calm, steady, consistent. But you know the truth. You weren't born that way. You built it. You built it by writing rules and respecting them. You built it by accepting losses without collapsing. You built it by walking away when others forced trades. You built it by choosing structure over impulse, day after day. This is what separates those who last from those who disappear. Not intelligence, not speed, not ambition. Structure. A trader without a plan is always one emotional moment away from destruction, one bad day away from spiraling, one good day away from overconfidence. A trader with a plan is anchored, grounded, protected. They don't need perfect conditions. They don't need excitement. They don't need constant action. They need consistency. And consistency is built quietly when no one is watching, through rules that are followed even when they feel inconvenient. That's the work most people avoid. That's why most people perish. Not because they didn't want it badly enough, but because they refused to slow down and build something solid. If you take anything from this, let it be this. The market is not something you conquer. It's something you survive long enough to understand. And survival does not come from talent alone. It comes from preparation. A plan is not a restriction. It's a lifeline. It doesn't promise easy days. It promises fewer catastrophic ones. It doesn't remove losses. It gives losses a place where they can't destroy you. And when you commit to that path fully, something changes at the deepest level. You stop trying to become a trader. You simply become one, steady, measured, present, someone who knows exactly what they're doing, and just as importantly, knows exactly when to do nothing. That is how you endure. That is how you grow. And that is how you avoid perishing in this game. At some point, you stop thinking about quitting. Not because trading suddenly became easy, but because you no longer feel lost inside it. Quitting usually comes from confusion, from exhaustion, from the feeling that no matter how hard you try, you're still guessing. When every day feels like a reset, when every loss feels like starting from zero again, the mind looks for an exit. A plan removes that feeling. You know where you are, you know what you're doing, you know what matters and what doesn't. Even on hard days, there's direction. And direction gives you something powerful, patience with yourself. You stop comparing your pace to others. You stop measuring your worth by screenshots. stories, or noise. You understand that your journey is built on repetition, not excitement. That understanding is maturity. You don't rush the process because you finally see it clearly. There is no shortcut that doesn't demand payment later. Every skipped rule, every ignored limit, every emotional decision always comes back to collect interest. So you choose the slow road on purpose. You choose consistency over drama. You choose clarity over chaos. You choose structure over impulse. And those choices stack quietly. You begin to trust your days. You know what you'll do before you sit down. You know when you'll stop before you start. You don't need the market to behave a certain way for you to feel okay. That independence is rare. Most traders are emotionally dependent on the screen. They feel good only when price moves their way. They feel anxious when it doesn't. Their mood rises and falls with every candle. You're no longer like that. Your emotional state is no longer tied to outcome. It's tied to execution, and that's freedom. Freedom doesn't mean doing whatever you want. Freedom means not being controlled by every feeling that passes through you. You can walk away after a loss without chasing. You can walk away after a win without forcing more. You can sit through quiet days without inventing opportunities. That control doesn't come from willpower alone. Willpower fades. It comes from structure that's been practiced until it's automatic. This is where identity changes. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to trade. You stop hoping to become consistent one day. You act like the person you're becoming now. You respect your time. You respect your capital. You respect your mental state. You no longer ask the market for validation. You no longer beg it to cooperate. You show up prepared and accept whatever outcome comes, knowing your behavior was sound. That calm is earned. It was built through boring days, through disciplined stops, through walking away when it felt uncomfortable, through accepting that growth is not always visible in the moment. And when you look back, you realize something important. The plan didn't just protect your account, it protected you. It kept you from self destruction, it kept you from emotional burnout, it kept you from turning frustration into recklessness. It gave you boundaries when you needed them most. Without it, you were exposed. With it, you became grounded. This is why traders without plans perish. Not immediately, not dramatically, slowly, quietly, through small compromises that add up to irreparable damage. And this is why traders with plans endure. They don't rely on emotion, they don't rely on hope. They rely on rules they've already decided to obey. That difference decides who stays and who disappears. You don't need to be extraordinary to last in this game. You need to be consistent. You don't need to win every day. You need to avoid destroying yourself on the bad ones. You don't need excitement. You need stability. And stability is built by a plan you respect even when no one is watching. If you carry that forward, if you commit to structure over impulse, discipline over desire, preparation over reaction, something inevitable happens. You last. You grow. You become calm where others panic. You become patient where others rush. You become steady where others break, not because you're special, but because you chose to prepare instead of guess. And in a market that rewards survival above all else, that choice makes all the difference. Eventually, you stop needing reminders. You don't need to hype yourself up before the session. You don't need to convince yourself to be disciplined. You don't need fear to keep you cautious or excitement to keep you engaged. You simply operate. That's when trading becomes clean. You sit down already knowing what matters and what doesn't. You don't scan endlessly. You don't jump between ideas. You don't argue with yourself about what you should do. Your rules already decided that. This is where most people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is tension. They think it's forcing yourself to behave. In reality, true discipline feels calm. It feels settled. It feels like clarity. When your plan is aligned with who you are, following it doesn't feel like sacrifice. It feels natural. You're not fighting urges all day. You're not resisting temptation constantly because temptation loses its power when structure is clear. You already know the answer before the question shows up. That's when consistency stops feeling fragile. It no longer depends on mood, confidence, or recent results. It's built into how you approach the day. This is also when time starts working for you, not just market time, personal time. You're no longer glued to the screen. You're no longer mentally exhausted at the end of every session. You have space to think, to reflect, to rest, and that rest matters. Clear thinking requires recovery. You can't make good decisions when your mind is overloaded. Traders who ignore this burn out quietly. They don't collapse all at once. They slowly lose sharpness. They miss simple things. They overcomplicate. They force. Your plan prevents that. It creates rhythm. It creates balance. It creates sustainability. You begin to see trading as a long-term craft, not a daily battle. Something you practice, refine, and respect. There's no rush anymore. You're not trying to arrive. You're not chasing some finish line. You're focused on showing up correctly. And over enough time, that approach reshapes your relationship with uncertainty. Uncertainty no longer scares you. You expect it. You plan for it. You respect it. You don't need certainty to act. You need rules. That understanding alone separates you from the majority. Most traders want guarantees. They want assurance. They want comfort before committing. And because the market never provides that, they hesitate, chase, or overreact. You don't. You accept uncertainty as part of the environment. You don't fight it. You work within it. That acceptance removes anxiety. You're no longer asking the market to make sense. You're asking yourself to stay consistent. And consistency is something you can control. This is where confidence becomes quiet, not loud confidence built on recent wins. Quiet confidence built on repeated execution. You trust that if you follow your process long enough, results will align. You don't need to force the timing. You don't need to speed it up. You've seen enough cycles to know how this works. You've seen impatience destroy accounts. You've seen overconfidence undo progress. You've seen lack of structure turn potential into regret. And you've seen discipline do the opposite. Slowly, relentlessly, without drama. That's why you no longer envy aggressive traders. You no longer admire recklessness disguised as courage. You understand that survival is the real edge. Anyone can win for a moment. Few can stay intact. Staying intact is a skill. It's built through limits you don't cross, through rules you don't bend, through days you choose not to trade. That restraint compounds more than most people realize. It compounds in your thinking, in your patience, in your ability to wait without discomfort. And waiting is the foundation of everything in this business. You're no longer afraid of missing out. You're more afraid of forcing something that doesn't belong. You've felt the cost of impatience. You've learned the price of ignoring structure. So you protect what you've built, not just your account, your mindset, your discipline, your long-term vision. This is where the idea of perishing truly makes sense. Traders don't perish because the market is cruel. They perish because they refuse to prepare. They walk in without rules. They rely on emotion. They chase outcomes instead of controlling behavior. And over time, that approach always leads to the same place. You chose differently. You chose to slow down, to define rules, to respect limits, to commit to structure even when it felt boring. That choice changes your trajectory. You may not feel it every day. You may not see it every week, but over years, it becomes undeniable. You're still here, still consistent, still growing, calm where others are frantic, steady where others collapse, focused where others scatter. That's not accidental. That's what happens when you trade with a plan and live by it. And in the end, that's the real achievement. Not how fast you made money, but how long you stayed disciplined enough to let it grow.